Hello, listeners, and welcome. We're back with the Hero Index podcast. I'm your host, Marcus McNeil, joined yet again by my co-host, David Murphy.
Hello, everyone.
And a prodigal daughter returns. Erin Keeper is back from her long vacation. Erin, welcome back. You feeling refreshed?
Thank you. Yeah, indeed.
All right, we got a good episode lined up. We had a number of cool things come out. This week, we're going to get into the first topic right away, and that is news breaking out of Lucasfilm that I believe is the Hollywood Reporter that broke this news, and they're pretty reliable when it comes to these things, that a standalone Obi-Wan Kenobi film is in development at Lucasfilm and will be the next standalone spin-off film from Lucasfilm following the Han Solo movie that's in process of filming right now. I wanted to turn to the panel, get everyone's opinions on this. I'll start off with David. David, what do you think about this news of Lucasfilm's next Star Wars film being an Obi-Wan standalone movie?
Well, it didn't take Disney very long to break their new toy, did it? I think if there's one character that we don't need to see any more of in the Star Wars universe, it is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's had 4 films where he's played a significant part in them. He's had a lot of exposure. I mean, when's it supposed to be taking place? Between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So what's he doing? Skulking around on Tatooine? Waiting for some droids to arrive who he mysteriously won't recognise when they turn up, despite having spent 3 films with them. Yeah, I think it's I'm very disappointed. I think the Star Wars universe has got so much more potential, and if I know I did write this last year that I think that they were always going to double down on the original trilogy, and this seems to be further proof of that they're not going to go too far outside.
I think you and I both echoed statements on that last year that they seem to be perpetually mining the original trilogy instead of going deeper in the Star Wars lore. Erin, your thoughts on Obi-Wan's standalone film? Do you have the same thoughts as David, or are you a little bit of a different?
No, I'm pretty much with David. I think a big part of why they even want to do it is because they know that Ewan McGregor would sign on, so they've already got a pretty big name actor attached to the project. And whether or not they'd find other things to do, it's kind of a shame that they have just ignored so much of the extended universe because, like you said, like they've really just stuck with what we've already seen on camera, but there's so much more and there's so many other characters that they don't really have to just stick with like the magical space wizards. They could actually just do like, oh hey, here's some aliens, here's maybe, another section of the universe that wasn't affected by the Empire and now is, or something, or now isn't. They do like a whole political drama in space, and I'd be super excited for that.
I'm of 2 minds on this one. Of course, I have this issue with them always kind of going back to the original trilogy characters when the Star Wars universe is so much broader, so much more expansive than what we've seen on representation on film so far. But also, I think if they announced this film prior to Rogue One, certainly prior to a Han Solo film, I would have been over the moon for it. I'm still actually fairly excited for it because I think there is quite a bit, if you go into, say, some of the comic books and things like that, a lot of things that Obi-Wan goes through while on Tatooine, whether it's learning to become a Force ghost from Qui-Gon Jinn, fighting Tusken Raiders, people coming around looking for Luke Skywalker, anything like that. It's this sort of lone samurai, Yojimbo sort of feel to it almost for Obi-Wan's story. But it's coming off of Rogue One, which played very, very close to
Episode 4.
Yeah, very close to Episode 4. And then having to go back, I don't really know how close to either one they'll play Obi-Wan. I'm guessing since, Ewan McGregor is still fairly younger looking person, he's definitely not the Alec Guinness Obi-Wan phase of his life right now. I imagine it would have to be closer to Revenge of the Sith.
Well, we don't have any guarantee that he stayed on Tatooine the whole time. Like, they could
No,
take
no,
him off
he could have
planet.
got up and left. He could have went off planet. That's totally within the realm of possibility. Uh, I also think it could be a little bit of a redemption in a way for Obi-Wan, because Ewan McGregor was a standout of the prequels. Obi-Wan is definitely one of the better things about the films. Can this movie sort of be not really an apology for the prequels, but at least an end cap to where, okay, you might have had to suffer through those, but we can make a good film out of that time period and go for a different sort of take than what we saw. I think this would be a quieter film, a slower film, definitely more ponderous and pensive. That is definitely something that haven't really seen in the Star Wars franchise, but I'm disappointed they wouldn't go in the direction of, say, like the Old Republic, or even something taking place post Return of the Jedi, and seeing the state of the world that was there. Of course, we pick up with Force Awakens now, but that's a 30-year gap that we have. That, sure, they may explore things like that well into the future of Star Wars, but it's still a big question mark in a lot of fans' minds now, because we've been living with the original trilogy and the prequels for so long. There's so much media that filled in so much of that in-between phase, but as far as Return of the Jedi goes, we really don't have anything beyond that. David, do you think that this is probably something reactionary? Because I know fans were calling for this a lot. Do you think this is fan appeasement on the part of Lucasfilm, or is it possibly something they've had in development for a long time before announcing this?
I think it's more fan service. I know I gave Rogue One a glowing review last year, but in retrospect, that film was just a great big and very delicious slice of fan service. But as a fan, I don't think I look beyond the fact that to someone who necessarily was lukewarm about Star Wars, that film probably wouldn't do very much for you. So they're obviously just, it's one of the world's biggest fan bases, probably only eclipsed by Harry Potter these days. So, they've got the audience there. It's a very, very safe choice.
Yeah.
I'd like to see maybe a bit more of Yoda's earlier days. That would tie in with the Old Republic thing a little bit more.
But he's 900 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe when he's about 300. Yeah.
Well, they've tentatively said something about that. They've tentatively said something about like Boba Fett. Like they've got a lot, and they've said that they want to have the next 15 years. They're going to do what Marvel's been doing and just start slating out all of their movies for the next however long. You're right. This fandom is never going to let it go.
No.
Nope.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's what was I going to say? It's no, I've lost it. I'm handing it back.
If you pick it up, come back with it. We'll go back into it. I think that it's really a matter of time before people are going to be like, okay, we've seen this. We've seen these characters again. I think after they do an Obi-Wan film, maybe that's the last time we really say, hey, we'll go with the original trilogy with this one. Fans are kind of clamoring for it. Ewan McGregor is still a very popular, very talented actor, and it sounds like the angle they're going for, at the very least, is something that could be beneficial to the Star Wars franchise. But I think if they try to go with young Chewbacca or something like that, it's not going to fly.
Starting to get a little niche here.
Yeah, and Erin, you mentioned the Bounty Hunters film. I think that's something that probably, when they were first developing these, everybody wanted them to go to initially. Like, yeah, Boba Fett, of course, that makes sense, because we've seen him when he was a kid, and we've seen him have a few lines in the original trilogy. But other than that, we don't know a whole lot about him. There's a lot to fill in there. These characters that we spent 3 or 6 movies with, we've kind of exhausted their story potential at this point in time. Do you think that maybe they should try angling for these characters that are more along the fringes of the Star Wars universe, rather than going for the big, splashy, central characters that we've been exposed to thus far?
Yeah, I think they need to go in a direction where we don't know how everything's going to turn out at the end. As good as Rogue One was, we know that they're going to get the plans. because
we all knew they're going to be dead too.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because
well, and like
none of them
it wasn't that
carried
even
over.
original characters. The original characters didn't even like turn people off of going to see this movie. So that's not even a safe bet to stick with someone we know. It's a safe bet if it's Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think that's the thing that going into The Force Awakens, I think Lucasfilm and Disney were very much so of the mind of getting people reintroduced back into this world, giving you a bit of the familiar. Of course, the knock on Force Awakens is that it's just a redo of A New Hope, and I think that is very apt and very fair criticism. I think after that, we were expecting more newness, and now we're just getting kind of warmed up leftovers at this point in time. They may have been good, tasty leftovers, but after a while, you start clamoring for something fresh. Rogue One, at least with the central characters there, it was fresh, and I think pretty much everyone really liked the new characters, both good and bad. I think the only returns that we got was with Darth Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin, who is digitally recreated. But other than that, the movie stood on its own. Of course, that last Darth Vader scene really made an awesome end cap to the movie. But
that's true.
Up until that point, I was totally emotionally invested with these new characters, bought into them, loved them, and I think that should have been proof positive to Lucasfilm that you can come with more original ideas. It's going to be fine. Everybody's going to respond to it. Like you said, Erin, it's Star Wars.
Exactly.
You could redo like the holiday Christmas special or something, and people are still going to turn up to go see it because it's Star Wars, and you're probably still going to sell a lot of toys too. So don't be afraid and really start going for it. I just see a lot of safe choices really coming out of Disney as a whole, because this is also something we see out of Marvel too, of where they won't stray from the beaten path too much. They're going to try to keep giving people what they think they want, but after a while, you got to switch it up a little bit. So I'm hopeful for Obi-Wan, but at the same time, I think I would have been a little bit more game to see them take it in a different direction and try to go for something a little bit harder, I guess you could say, a little bit more original and more unfamiliar to people with Star Wars. I think they want to, of course, keep the general audience around a little bit, but they got to figure this time, if somebody's not into Star Wars right now, they're probably never going to be.
Sure.
So you're making these for the Star Wars fans, and the Star Wars fans are pretty well versed into the original characters. So take some risks, go out there and try something new. So I think right now we're going to get into the next topic. That is going to be Game of Thrones. We haven't had the chance to cover a lot here because we've been mostly cycling around. Erin's been gone since the new season has kind of kicked off. We're now past the midpoint because what day is this? Season 8 episodes, I believe.
Yes, it's a short season. They've divided this final season into two halves.
Right, and we just got past the number 5, I believe. So we're going to be getting a pretty big episode right now. I just want to get the panel's opinions on this season, Game of Thrones, thus far, and if it's meeting expectations. Are you disappointed? Erin, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I actually had kind of checked out of the universe, checked out of the fandom a couple years back when they started getting a little. What's a nice way of putting this? A little rapey. Just a little, it's just a little too much for me in some points. But then
I was actually thinking a lot about some of the development with the female characters this season. I'm like, it's nice to see nobody's gotten raped and brutalized.
Right, exactly. So or at the very least, like maybe some repercussions would have been nice. And so I kind of checked out.
The guy who raped Sansa was torn apart by his own
season
dogs.
later, though, like a whole season later. It took a minute for him to get his comeuppance, but yeah, that's so season. I think that was season 5 that they did that, and then like season 6.
No, that was season 6. Season just gone.
Right, but then so season 6 like turned it around. Like they felt very much like the Game of Thrones creators kind of apologizing for season 5. So this season, I'm still invested, but I'm also waiting to be burned. So I'm like, I'm kind of holding off. I'm like, all right, I'm about this, but I also know that they are very willing to, just they're very willing to just kind of do whatever they want to their characters, and that's a really good thing, and also kind of a really bad thing. Like, they don't play around, or they play around a lot with unconventional storytelling, which is cool, but also sometimes difficult to watch.
Yeah, David?
Yep. Well, I think to some degree it's a case of be careful what you wish for. I struggled with Game of Thrones in seasons 3 or 4. They were oversaturated with characters. They were very bloated in terms of plot. They kept falling back on what I've termed their triple exposition, where if they had to get a lot of plot relayed to you, you'd find yourself in a brothel and there'd be lots of breasts and whatever on show. And then they'd talk about a load of people who were just like, who's that? I can't remember whose name that is. And it struggled as an adaptation at that point. Once they got past season 4, they also got past the books. So they were able to do their own thing. And season 5 really brought me back into the fold, because all of a sudden they just started focusing on about 10 characters. And it gave the show a lot more purpose. It's no coincidence that season 5 was its first win as a series for its dramatic Emmy. But now we find ourselves in a situation where I don't think they've got enough characters left to kill anybody off anymore. And it's feeling a little bit toothless. It's lost its edge.
Do you feel this? I mean, I know they have to blaze through because of the shortened season this year. Actually, in terms of runtime, the coming episode is going to be, I think, the longest of the season thus far. It's almost an hour and 20 minutes, I believe. It's almost a feature-length Game of Thrones movie. It seems like they are jumping between basically the Lannisters and Daenerys, Jon Snow, and we're not getting a whole lot else. Just a little bit of Arya and Sansa peppered in here and there, but it does seem to be really, really short-sighted in terms of how it's looking at the events in Westeros right now.
Yeah, it is. It has become quite myopic in that sense, and I don't think that's necessarily inappropriate. It did need to pull all its plot strands together at some point, but it was like the episode with the big dragon attack on the Lannisters. In previous seasons, I would have thought, well, this could be it for Jaime Lannister. But this time round, I was like, no, he's going to make it. That dragon's going to be very selective as to where he's breathing fire. Somehow, I think he's going to be all right.
I haven't noticed there's a lot of red shirts starting to pop up too in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
It's like, okay, here's the party going north of the wall. Like, hey, who are these like 4 guys just tagging along with them all of a sudden? And I don't want to let too much slip, but since I'm going to be preoccupied tonight, I did a bad thing.
Oh, Marcus.
Oh.
You didn't get hold of a leaked copy, did you?
I won't reference where I got it from, but
Holding out on us.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything, but first off, I think a lot of people are thinking that this episode is going to be really something special. It is. It's probably one of the better episodes of Game of Thrones, period. And you definitely get the sense of they're moving the story along very quickly. We get a lot of development this coming episode and beyond. It's crazy to think that after tonight, we'll have 2 more episodes and that's really it. But yeah, there's this feeling though that maybe it's not broad enough. You spend a lot of time with that group north of the wall. The whole episode is basically dedicated to them. And then when something else develops, I'm like, okay, this is like moving along very quickly. Westeros used to feel like a very large place. Now they're getting everywhere within 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, apparently Gendry really upped his rowing skills because they're getting from point A to point B from the south to the north pretty quick now. And actually, I feel like we're not spending enough time with the Lannisters either. There's a lot to be had there, and I think Jaime especially has a very strong through line for this season. I get the feeling we're just not spending enough time with him and Cersei. It's becoming very much so the Daenerys and Jon Snow show.
Yeah.
They're creepy, possibly incestuous.
Yeah, it's almost like the creators are trying to prepare us for something.
Yeah. So I think they'd be better served by broadening the structure of the show just a little bit. It's hard because we're in this point where, like you said, David, the criticism of, okay, too many characters, definitely at one point in time. There's a lot to follow. I actually didn't start watching Game of Thrones up until a month ago. Me and Erin was discussing prior to the show. I got through it really quick, so it doesn't seem as bad to me because I watched so many episodes and got through all the seasons so quickly. It's like, oh, who are the Martells? All right, whatever, they're gone. Yeah. Everybody's kind of out of the picture. I get to focus on just, the core people. And also, since I didn't have to wait a year for the show to come back, if there's dips in the seasons, I didn't feel them as hard because I was still coming off watching other episodes. So.
Sure, yeah.
I think in the
but like you
grand
said,
scheme of things,
like you said, they're adding a lot of red shirts. So I think that's them like trying to introduce more characters and to broaden the story out a little bit. But the problem being, we all know this is the end game. Like we all know what we're winding down. So what's the point of getting attached to anybody new?
Yeah, it's like cannon fodder number 1, number 2, number 3. You're going to get burned by a dragon. You're going to get burned by a dragon, stabbed, throat slit, burned. And I think right now they're kind of hinging everything on the emotional attachment that we have to the characters they're introducing right now. We're very invested in Jon and Daenerys and Cersei and Jaime. And God, I want more Bronn. I want more. I want more
that
Tyrion and Daenerys and
an angle which has been massively neglected through the last 3 seasons, including this one, the last 3 seasons. We've not spent enough time with that side of things. I'm not sure how important he's going to turn out to be, but a lot more time could have been spent with that side of things. But I think that's my main takeaway at the moment. Game of Thrones, from being quite an unconventional piece of television, has become very conventional this season. I think it has become it's on rails at the moment, and maybe that's what it needs to be, and maybe that's what will create the most satisfaction for audiences. It probably doesn't help that over here it's shown in a double bill next to Twin Peaks, which is by far the most unconventional thing that's ever been shown on television. So
I still haven't had a chance to get into it.
It is quite something. It's in equal measures brilliant and frustrating, but I think the problem is I kind of come off Game of Thrones and then I watch Twin Peaks straight away, and it's like, Game of Thrones feels awfully conventional, but I think most television feels awfully conventional in comparison, so that's not necessarily Game of Thrones' fault. But
we have so much genre television at this point in time too. It's kind of hard to keep track of everything. They kind of have to start tightening up a little bit just so everyone's focus can stay there narratively. I just think maybe coming off of season 6, because in my opinion, season 6 was the best season of Game of Thrones.
Yes, I agree.
And I think they really hit it on all points. Like, I think all the characters that we had, everything we were introduced to, all the developments, it felt extremely well balanced. And I think this season we're not getting that. It's like season 6, Littlefinger was a huge presence. He was one of the really main characters when he got down to it in season 6. And this season he's faded so far to the background. And of course he's coming back a little bit more and getting prominence after the last episode, but it's still this very shadowy, looming presence. Maybe that's what they're going for, but at the same time, I think it's those characters that make Game of Thrones what they are. We sort of know what to expect from the Lannisters and from Jon and Daenerys. It's these characters that kind of revolve around them and move in and out of these relationships and these battles that really make or break the show most of the time. And since we haven't been getting a lot of those characters, it does seem it's a tighter focus, but it seems to be missing something.
Yeah,
in that
I think
grander scope that we had in season 6.
I think if I could just jump in there and say, I think that's a good point. Is I think all of those main characters, all of the Starks, the Lannisters, and Daenerys, they've all finished their character arcs now. They're all fully formed as characters. We know exactly who they are. They don't seem to have any more room for development.
Yeah.
And because it's focusing on them so much, there is very little room for surprises in their behaviour and actions. We know exactly what they're capable of. We know all their journeys, and their journeys have now while there's still a way to go in them, I don't see them changing particularly over the space of them. So I think that is why, surprises have been minimal so far this season.
Even notable deaths too. Actually, how about we start a little bit under a little bit of a gamble here. I want to get opinions since we haven't really seen anybody bite it hard that much yet this season, except for the Tarleys. They got obliterated. Yeah. Who do we think will be the major death upcoming for the final 2-3 episodes? Because someone seems to have to go, and it's kind of tradition that some major character will go by the time we get to season's end. Who do you think is marked for death this season so far, Erin?
Well, Marcus, you're a little bit ahead, so you got a little bit of a cheating insight here.
Well, yeah, but I'm not gonna say anything.
It's really difficult to say who might die because they could either go a really, really traditional way, like, getting away from their just suddenly, spontaneously killing people kind of motif that they've been doing, and go for a more traditional ending like we could all sort of predict. Or they'll just go hard left and everyone will be dead and just like no one is left in any kind of position and Westeros is just on fire.
I was about to say, I don't think Westeros could survive another Red Wedding type of scenario. Like, oh, well, that's the show. Everyone's gone.
I mean, well, it really feels like they're setting up Littlefinger to do something, to mess up the Starks up in Winterfell. So whether that's going to just be like him putting a wedge between Arya and Sansa, and then Arya goes down to King's Landing and starts just like murdering people, or if it's going to be something to do with like Jaime and Cersei. I don't know as far as deaths, because like you said, David, they really don't seem like they've got many more main characters to kill off at the present moment. But the season's got to have something big happen to shake it up between now and next season.
Yeah, I think Ari and Jaime are probably next in line for the chop. That's my prediction. I think Ari's taking too many risks, and I think Jaime's been kind of got a bit of a death wish on him now. After everything that's happened to him. So I think they're the most likely characters, which probably means they'll be totally fine and it's someone else who's going to get it.
I do have one prediction as far as like endgame, and I really think that like Jaime's going to be the one who has to take Cersei out, because Jaime's got this he's got this whole like Kingslayer, history. So I don't know. He might put the good of Westeros ahead of his own, feelings.
And actually, you look at his character development, I don't think there's been a character, probably in Game of Thrones, that's been kind of emasculated. Well, save for maybe
Theon.
Poor little Greek, yeah, who got physically done so. But I mean, his teeth as a character has been just taken away from him. He lost his hand. He's lost most of his fighting ability. Cersei clearly has vice grips around him at this point in time, and he's just kind of taking shit from everyone. He's taking shit from Daenerys and Tyrion. He's taking shit from Cersei. He's taking shit from Bronn. He has the upper hand on no relationships so far, and I think especially after last episode, with Cersei basically telling him like, "Oh, don't ever betray me again," and the look that he gets in his eyes, he's like, "Well, I'm going to go through with this," but I'm starting to get the feeling that he understands that this relationship is only going to kind of go one way.
Yeah.
It's this whole thing of how much are you willing to take for the sake of love, even already when your love is kind of damped as it is at this point in time. How much are you willing to sacrifice to see things? I think Cersei has this very stark view of the world where she doesn't really care. As long as it's not her family, she'll burn the world down. And Jaime still cares. He still cares about his brother Tyrion. He still cares about people in Westeros. He has a heart, and as twisted as he can be and manipulated by Cersei, he always kind of moves back to his logical and emotional center. And I think there's only so far Cersei can push him before he starts pushing back, and by that time it's probably going to be a bit bloody.
Yeah.
All right, so after that recap, we'll go into the next one. Netflix released all of Defenders as per standard with all of their shows on Friday. I got a chance to see all of it. Erin, I believe you did too.
Uh-huh.
All right, David.
I've only seen the first half an hour, sorry.
Not a problem at all. So maybe we'll bench you for this. But I did want to get general thoughts so far. We won't go into super spoilery detail because I know a lot of people out there are probably
right. It's
still
only been
getting
like
through
2
the
days
episodes.
for us.
Yeah. Thankfully, I think I had a day off from work, so I got a chance to just turn it on, binge the whole thing, then go through with it. Erin, your thoughts on Defenders thus far, and your opinions on the show?
Yeah. I think it's fine. I think there was maybe a lot more they could have done to keep it, because I know they cut it down from like 13 episodes to 8 episodes, but I think they could have cut it down even more. Just really streamlined it, really kept the focus on the characters developing relationships with each other, because I think that starts to really happen around episode 3 and 4 is really when the characters kind of confront each other about like, wait, he's blind? Wait, she's super strong? Wait. And so like those moments are really, really great. And like Jessica just being a bitch and Danny being a little man-child, like it all works together. But then you get a lot of the stuff with the Hand, and I feel like their plot kind of meandered. Like we've been told for, all of the Daredevil seasons, Iron Man season, that the Hand is this big threat. So we already know that they've got some kind of secret shady plans. But this season just felt like they were trying to really, really ramp that up before they finally admitted what those plans are. And I could have done with a lot less of that, honestly.
Yeah, I did feel like by the time they got to that point in time, it was, oh, okay, that's what they want to do?
Right, like I was like, oh, didn't we already know that?
Are you saying
Sure.
A Marvel villain is underwhelming? Because, God, am I shocked by that.
I mean, who could have known?
Yeah.
The Netflix side, though, is the one that actually bucks that convention. They actually have really great villains. And,
well, they have really relatable and
got
sympathetic
a lot
villains.
of them out there, too. Yeah, because, of course, we don't get Kingpin here. We don't get Kilgrave.
Yeah.
We don't get Cottonmouth. We don't get a lot of these really great villains that we got. We do get a lot of Madame Gao, a lot of Elektra, and they were really good. And I'm kind of the same thought. I'm like, okay, well, I liked it. It is quite an enjoyable series, and when it's good, it's actually really good. The chemistry between all of the Defenders, I think, is actually better than we could have really anticipated. Iron Fist especially, even though Danny's still very much an emotional man-child, he starts developing a little bit throughout this series, and he's far more tolerable than he was in Iron Fist.
True.
And it looks like Finn Jones has also spent some more time with his martial arts training. The fight choreography for Iron Fist is also a bit better this time around too. I think he shines the most when he is paired, of course, with Luke Cage. He has the most chemistry with. That's their relationship.
That had to be intentional.
When he's apart, yeah, definitely intentional. He seems to be the yin to his yang. When he's placed next to Luke Cage, all of a sudden he almost becomes like a different character. Like his precociousness becomes, I guess, balanced more by Luke's very low-key, calm nature. Yeah. The chemistry between Jessica Jones and Daredevil becomes really great. I think through like episodes 3 through probably 6, they become really the stars of the show, and I think it benefits in those episodes for focusing on those two a little bit more. And you think, oh man, maybe these really should have been split into two different shows. You have like the Jessica Jones Iron Fist show, Jessica Jones Daredevil show, and you have the Iron Fist and Luke Cage show. And it kind of does sort of fit that a little bit. I think Daredevil is still the highlight. It still goes to show that Matt Murdock is still the best character out of all these episodes. So whenever the plot goes to focusing back on him for some reason, the show does this thing where it kind of does pick up with the characters individually. So you get a lot of individual development for them kind of spinning out of their solo series. So in a way, each episode here is like, season, 2.1 for a lot of these characters because it still pushes their stories forward. I think where that kind of bites a little bit is that it does that at the sacrifice of the Defenders' narrative. So it's like,
Yes.
okay, we spent so much time with, say, Luke or Jessica or Matt this episode with what's going on in their individual lives. We lose focus of the greater conflict that's coming in. So whenever the hand pops back up, it's like, oh yeah, well, this is a thing again. We have to attend to that after we've just got invested in what's going on with the individual characters. Like, can we go back to that a little bit? Because I think that's where it really starts to shine, is those moments where they do focus on the individual characters a little bit, and then when there's 2 or 3 of the characters together and they get to develop a relationship from there. So I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. It's definitely better than Iron Fist. It's better than Luke Cage in total, which I think really fell off around the last half. I think basically after Cottonmouth died in that episode, in that show, it just went off the rails after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hasn't hit the heights that Daredevil season 1 or season 2 has. It's kind of in that middle of the road place, and I think I go back and I'll probably watch it again for some of the scenery and things like that. But as an overall narrative, I never really felt the stakes that would bring all these guys together. In the end, it almost felt like, okay, you could have pretty much dropped Luke Cage by himself into this scenario. You probably could have taken care of everything there. Did you really need all the Defenders together for this? But I look forward to where it goes character-wise for the Defenders from here. I don't know if they're going to go back into a season 2, whatever the case may be, but I'm also kind of happy that we're moving past this certain conflict and this sort of development too, because we get to get into the nitty-gritty of what's driving these characters individually instead of having this overarching thing that's touched on through all the series. David, anything to add from 30 minutes?
30 minutes right No, I mean, apart from the fact that what really did turn me off was there was just a lot of focus on Danny and Iron Fist, and I did not get on with that. I did not get on with that series at all. I think one thing just...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, if you do put up with Danny, then you get to see the rest of the Defenders kind of smack him down a little and tell him to calm down and grow the hell up.
Yeah.
So that's worth it eventually.
That is pretty good. It is worth it. And I think at one point they basically physically remove his character from this.
They have to save him from himself for a minute.
Other than that, I just kind of felt that the actual character introductions were possibly... I just thought they were done really well, and I did kind of wonder, did you actually need all these preamble seasons to it? I thought the Matt Murdock introduction in the opening episode was really good. I think it spoke a lot about his character. Luke Cage, from what I've seen, was very brief. Jessica Jones, okay, I think she did need a series leading into it, because they certainly referenced a lot that went on with her. I don't know, I haven't seen the whole thing, but what are your guys' take on that? Did they need all of this preamble leading into it, or could they have just leapt straight into the Defenders?
I think for the most part, the 2 series that focus the most on these things is Daredevil and Iron Fist, and I think especially for the Hand, they're primarily a Daredevil villain. He usually fights them with the assistance of people in his circle. Same for Iron Fist too. He's gone up against them as well. So it's kind of crucial for those 2 characters. I think maybe Jessica Jones and Luke Cage in the Warrant Full series. I think there's some really good stuff there. I did really enjoy Jessica Jones, and I did enjoy most of Luke Cage, but I think it feels weird because it feels like if they would have shrunk those down to maybe not stuck to 13 episodes, but to more of a 6 to 8 episode format, those shows would have greatly benefited from that. So I think while it isn't necessary for the grand scheme of things, I'm glad it happened. It feels like, I mean, they are going into seasons, multiple seasons, things like that. So they weren't all made just for the benefit of the Defenders. They have their own kind of torch to carry on their own. But I think if they would have maybe given Iron Fist a different direction, because I don't think he needs to go as much into it. There was nothing introduced in Iron Fist that doesn't get resolved in Iron Fist. All of the things he goes through has really not a lot of implications for the Defenders. It's mostly Daredevil's story. So if you watch Daredevil season 2 and you go straight into the Defenders, you're not going to miss pretty much anything. A lot of the story picks up basically right after all those things leave off.
Well, it feels like they tried really hard to make the Defenders a show that you could watch independently. without having seen any of the other shows. But what I'm actually worried about is that they integrated so much plot and character development into this crossover that you're going to have to watch it between the current seasons and any future seasons for these individual characters. Like, they've just made it too essential.
That's true. Yeah, like I said, they included so much development for the characters that if you don't watch the Defenders and you try to pick up in Daredevil season 3 or Luke Cage or Jessica Jones season 2, you're gonna be like, okay, the state of their world is a little bit different right now. Why is Jessica not drinking so hard all of a sudden?
Oh, no, I'm sure she's still gonna keep drinking. Don't worry.
Yeah. Why does Danny Rand all of a sudden seem like he's not as much of a punk bitch as he was before? So those are going to be questions that you have going into it from there. So I would say definitely, David, if you have a problem with Iron Fist, keep watching, because by the end of it, he definitely reaches a certain point where he's realized as a character, and you're probably not going to get any temper tantrums. And there's no flashbacks of his mom flying out of a plane and dying, so you're spared anymore of those. And I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for us for the episode. Thanks, you guys, as always, for coming back. We look forward to picking it up this week. And, of course, you guys always check out HeroIndex.net, where we try to cover all these topics in greater detail. We've got some cool things kicking off this week. David, thank you for coming by.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Erin, thank you for coming back. Try not to leave us again for too long.
All right, Marcus.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. We'll catch you next time.